Two Chinese demographers last fall predicted that China would lose half its population in 45 years. So if you do the arithmetic, China could have maybe 1/3 of the number of people it currently has at the turn of the century. This is just unprecedented, Doug. The world has never seen anything unless there's been a war or disease. So right now, China stands on the edge of a crisis.
I wanted to reach out to you because it was just a week ago or so that I was perusing Twitter and I saw a tweet from you saying words to the effect that you can't prove it, but you have a suspicion that China is trying to buy up American agricultural land, produce, et cetera, et cetera. A frightening theory. What leads you to subscribe to it?
Many people throughout the heartland talk about Chinese buyers coming in with lots of cash and taking up farms and ranches. And the disturbing thing about this, Doug, is that in Oklahoma, apparently they're buying up farms and ranches, but they're not going into farming and ranching after their purchases. There is some indication that China is actually buying some of this land for marijuana farming, which would even be worse. I don't know what's going on, but obviously they look like they're trying to disrupt our agricultural production. And so we've got to be concerned, and we shouldn't allow these purchases until we figure out what's going on.
Would that disruption also include their purchase of food processing plants? I know that some years ago they bought Smithfield Ham, which is the largest pork producer in the United States.
Yes, well, they've certainly been trying to do that. And it's not just in the U.S. they're doing this. So there seems to be a coordinated plan from Beijing. Remember, China each year is less and less food self-sufficient. And there is, if not a crisis, there really is a growing problem there, which is starting to affect the population. Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, a couple of years ago had what he called his Clean Your Plate campaign. In other words, make sure you eat everything that you have and don't order too many dishes in restaurants. So this was a sign that China felt that there really is a food shortage problem throughout the country nationwide.
And an indication of just how precarious their supply may be vis-a-vis their population is they have these kinds of measures regarding other things. I recall when I was a high school student, they had a policy of everybody kill 5 flies a day. They got rid of their fly infestation problem. They've done that with other kinds of infestations.
Yes, well, Mao Zedong had his sparrow campaign because he thought that sparrows were pests. But what happened is because they killed the birds in great numbers, then they had pest infestations, which were even worse for agriculture. And during the Great Leap Forward, at the end of the 1950s and the beginning of the 1960s, there was mass starvation in China where tens of millions of Chinese perished. We don't know the exact numbers, but people say anywhere between 30 to 70 million people died.
And perhaps the biggest case of that is the one-child policy, where a lot of women were required to abort their second female children, overwhelmingly female children. Now we have a whole generation of men who overpopulate the women of their same age group, which is creating untold problems.
Yes, well, the demographics in China are absurd. Just haven't been seen anywhere else. So you have somewhere between 32 to maybe 50 million excess males. And you have a number of other abnormalities in the demographic patterns of China, which is now leading perhaps to the steepest decline in demography in the history of war or disease. That's projected. Two Chinese demographers last fall predicted that China would lose half its population in 45 years. So if you do the arithmetic, China could have maybe 1/3 of the number of people it currently has at the turn of the century. This is just unprecedented, Doug. The world has never seen anything unless there's been a war or disease. So right now, China stands on the edge of a crisis.
So what does that mean for their future, that demographic problem?
Well, the demographic problem means that China is almost certainly going to be a lot smaller than it is today, which means that Chinese leaders, they rely on intimidation for getting what they want externally. And that means, Chinese leaders can do the arithmetic. They can see this better than we can. And so probably they're thinking they've got a closing window of opportunity to accomplish what they consider to be historic goals. which means that this is a exceedingly dangerous period because China can take us by surprise.
And that brings me back to this central issue which we're talking about today, which is the agricultural problem. It occurs amidst this war in Ukraine. It's hard to see how Ukrainian farmers are planting their wheat crops, which feed 1/3 of the world, I believe, certainly a lot of Europe and virtually all of Africa. They provide a lot of fertilizer to the United States. Do you expect to see any kind of food shortages in this country?
Well, we'll see food shortages. Not so bad in this country because we are self-sufficient from an agricultural point of view. But as you point out, in the Middle East and Africa, it's going to be severe problems in the very near future. Russia and Ukraine together account for 30% of the world's exported wheat, 20% of its exported corn. There are no food exports coming out of the Black Sea right now, and very few going out of the Baltic. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization has a food index, and it showed that February was record high, and that March, the price index was 12.6% higher than February. This is going to be a situation where a lot of people throughout the world, thank God not in the United States, are going to go hungry. But because we're talking about agriculture, this is a global commodity. The prices are global, which means Americans are going to pay more for their food.
Mm-hmm. Is that the ultimate Chinese objective with buying up American agricultural land?
Could very well be, Doug. As I said, we don't really know exactly what they're doing, but they're certainly not up to any good, which means that we should not be allowing these purchases until we figure out what's going on.
What are some other possibilities?
It could be that, you have some wealthy Chinese just want to buy land. We see Bill Gates do this, for instance, and they just might be emulating him. But that doesn't explain a number of the phenomena that we have seen. So we've got to be concerned that China does not have benign goals here. And also, we've had these unexplained rash of fires through our food processing plants in the U.S. in the last 3 or 4 months. That's got to be of great concern to us, regardless of who's behind it. Our infrastructure is now under attack.
Please explain that to our viewers. I was unaware of that. Agricultural processing plants are burning up?
Yeah, there's been a rash of fires over the last 3 or 4 months. It could be coincidence. It could be part of somebody's malign plans. It could be China, it could be somebody else. But until we understand what's going on, we've got to be extremely cautious because food, of course, is critical. The United States is blessed. We are self-sufficient in food. We can be self-sufficient in energy. A lot of the world is not, including China. And as we go through a period of deglobalization, which is accelerated by the Ukraine war, countries are going to start to scramble and fight with each other over these scarce resources. As George Stephanopoulos said at the beginning of this month, perhaps the next world war has already started because he was referring to the scramble for food.
Well, that's fascinating, and it seems to me in the face of all this, the Biden administration is just AWOL here, completely unproductive in terms of doing anything about it. That's perhaps understandable given the president's compromised interest with China and his son Hunter Biden. But Congress has been also expressing pretty much benign neglect over this. Where is Congress?
Yes. Yeah, where is Congress? Where is the administration's, the bureaucracy? I know that we can only deal with one crisis at a time, but unfortunately, we're in a world right now where we've got multiple crises, and we've got to deal with all of them because many of them critically affect the security of the United States and the welfare of the American people. We don't have the luxury of just dealing with one issue at one time.
You're absolutely right. Gordon Chang, you provide us so much food for thought, and we certainly hope in this particular case you're not the canary in the coal mine, but you forewarned us if you turn out to be that. Thank you so much, Gordon. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Doug.